As fall camp has started this week, and a lot of quarterback storylines being written about and thrown around, from competitions to quarterback injuries to who the top returning quarterbacks are, I want to take a few minutes and talk about who the most underrated quarterbacks are. So I have a list of 5 guys entering the 2021 season who I think are the most underrated quarterbacks in college football. And there was kind of some criteria to making this list. You had to be a starting quarterback in the past, so you can't be like a first-year starter. You had to have starting experience or at least gotten the majority of playing time in the past. So all 5 of these guys do. Another kind of criteria that we took into consideration, if you will, is they aren't guys who have gotten a lot of publicity this offseason. So they may still be underrated in your opinion, but they've gotten a lot of publicity, so they don't count for this list. So an example would be like a Carson Strong from Nevada, Dylan Gabriel, UCF, Desmond Ritter, Cincy, Malik Willis, and Grayson McCall. Those type of guys who have gotten more publicity, and rightfully so, aren't candidates for this list. But before we dive into who my 5 underrated quarterbacks are, I just want to encourage you to consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you like any quarterback-related content. As long as it's related to the quarterback position, it's fair game here. So let's go ahead and dive into the actual list and look at the 5 guys who I think are the most underrated quarterbacks entering the 2021 season. And again, let me know your thoughts if you agree, disagree with all that stuff. Let me know in the comments below. Let's go ahead and look at the guys. Connor Basile is the most underrated quarterback entering the 2021 season, in my opinion, and for several reasons, mainly being the fact of what he did last year against SEC competition. And if you look at the numbers, they were pretty pedestrian. Had a little over 2,300 yards passing, 7 passing touchdowns, a few touchdowns on the ground, and 6 interceptions. A completion percentage was about 67-ish%. So nothing that jumped out of you. But if you watch film, I think he did a good job picking up the offensive scheme. I think he'll do a better job this year as he has a full all season to develop. And not to mention, they went 5-5 in SEC play last year. Of course, they lost to Bama. They lost to Tennessee. That was kind of the game they probably should have won. Then they beat LSU, beat Kentucky, beat South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Arkansas, then losing to Georgia and Mississippi State and Florida as well. So I think the big step for him is if he can elevate his competition to the better teams this next year in 2021, I think you'll see him take that next step. And I think Missouri potentially take that next step as well. But Connor Basile, a guy to remember, a guy to check out this season, keep your eye on because he had a good 2020 season. I think he'll only improve this year. Sam Hartman's a guy who, in my opinion, has been underrated since the 2018 season when he came on as a freshman and played pretty well, splitting some time with Jamie Newman, but getting the majority of the playing time. And that year, he passed for nearly 2,000 yards, right under it, had 16 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. And I think you saw him get better over time. 2019, he was the backup to Jamie Newman and played sparingly, and then last year was the guy and really took over and did a lot of things well. I think the ball really kind of jumps out of his hands. He has a stronger arm than people think, and he's a more athletic quarterback than people think as well. Something else, he has that moxie, if you will. I hate to be cliche, but he's got that moxie to him, and a very confident guy, not afraid to push the ball downfield. Even against the Clemsons, right, he's able to stay in the pocket and take shots. And last year had a very good year. His yards per attempt were 8.1, which was up drastically since the 2018 season. So did a good job pushing the ball downfield, took care of the football as well. 13 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, had 2 touchdowns on the ground, and 4 of those interceptions came in 1 game, I believe, at the end of the year. So a guy who I think is very underrated. And if you put him on the roster of a lot of other college football teams right now, I think he makes that team a lot better right off the bat. So a guy that if you haven't seen play, you should check him out in 2021, and who I think will have a very good year and help Wake Forest potentially surprise some teams. Max Duggan is a guy who could potentially be the second best quarterback in the Big 12. And, a guy that is just flying under the radar right now, but I think we saw a lot more consistency last year in 2020. 2019, he got a lot of playing time as a freshman, and then 2020 last year, he was held out for a lot of the practice because of some COVID concerns. We got cleared and then kind of jumped on the scene and showed a lot of improvement. So let's look at the numbers real quick from 2019 to 2020. He improved his yards per attempt from 6.1 to 7.5. His completion percentage improved by over 7%, and his TD to interception ratio improved from about 1.5 to 1 to about 2.5 to 1, which is a fantastic improvement. Duggan's a guy who can really sling the ball, but is a very good athlete as well. We've seen him do a lot of dangerous things on the ground, and something that poses a threat for defenses for the simple fact he can run, and he rushed over 500 yards last year and over 10 touchdowns on the ground. So I think he's a guy to be aware of if you're a Big 12 fan, just a fan of college football. This guy has potential to be one of the top quarterbacks in the Big 12 next year, and so just keep your eye on him because I think he'll take the next step and kind of complete the package as being a more consistent quarterback. Chase Garbers is a quarterback that's easy to go unnoticed because he plays at Cal, and the Pac-12 only had a few games last year. But if we take away the 2020 season, because they only played in a few games, and look at his 2018 and 2019 season, we see that he did a pretty good job as a quarterback when healthy. So his biggest knock is just staying healthy, staying on the field. But if he is healthy and is on the field, he's going to help Cal tremendously. Without him, they are a much different team. But let's look at the numbers real quick from 2019, Chase Garbers' best year. He had 14 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, and his yards per attempt were 8.2. So he did a really good job pushing the ball downfield, and for a Cal offense, that's a really high number. The year before that, he was only at 5.8, and so he showed the ability to improve, to be coachable, and to develop as a quarterback. So with last year being 2020, we didn't get to see much of him. I think we'll see a good Cal team because of Chase Garbers this year. He can run a little bit. He's a good, tough athlete, and he gives the Cal a real kind of threat at the quarterback position, and the offense relies on him a lot. So Chase Garbers is a guy to remember and keep your eye on this year in 2021. Levi Lewis is one of the best quarterbacks in all the group of 5. And in a year that you hear a lot of, Dylan Gabriel, Desmond Ritter, Carson Strong, Grayson McCall type talk, and rightfully so because they had great years last year, you haven't heard as much Levi Lewis talk. And I think you should, because I think he's an underrated guy, and he's entering his 3rd year as a starting quarterback for Louisiana, which is one of the best teams in all the group of 5. And I think Texas fans should remember Levi Lewis's name because I think he's going to have probably a pretty good game against Texas and maybe give them a kind of a run for their money. But back to Levi Lewis, he's entering his 3rd season as a starting quarterback. His first year starting was in 2019. He had 26 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, and then he added 3 touchdowns on the ground. Last year, he had 19 touchdowns to 7 interceptions with 5 touchdowns on the ground. So someone who takes care of the football but has a very smooth, natural throwing delivery. A little undersized, but that's not something that I'm really too concerned about. And I think in today's day and age, the short quarterback myth has kind of been debunked, which is great. But he's a guy to remember and to watch this year who could, if he has a big year, potentially be on some draft boards for some teams for a late round pick. But again, Levi Lewis, underrated quarterback. Check him out next year, especially watch week 1 against Texas. So again, just to recap, my top 5 most underrated quarterbacks entering the 2021 season are Connor Basile from Missouri, Sam Hartman, Wake Forest, Max Duggan, TCU, Chase Garbers from Cal, and Levi Lewis from Louisiana. And we had a few guys that just missed the list that you could make an argument for. Some of those guys were Jake Haener from Fresno State, who was the transfer from Washington, had a really good season last year as a Fresno State quarterback, could be one of the best guys in the Mountain West. Cornelius Brown from Georgia State, busted on the scene last year as well, and could be one of the best quarterbacks in the Sun Belt again this year. And then Michael Pratt from Tulane had a good season. And then Tanner Morgan, you could probably throw in as well from Minnesota, but it really just depends if he bounces back and kind of is more in that 2019 form. But I want to hear from you guys. Let me know who your top 5 quarterbacks are, your 5 most underrated quarterbacks, excuse me. Let me know who they are in the comments below. Who do you agree with me on? Who do you disagree with me on? Just let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on the next quarterback-related video.